You need a demographic pyramid, and a diverging bar chart, and a radar chart, and the choropleth map, and the heat map, and you need all of them to run identically on Android, iOS, desktop, and Wasm without any JavaScript bridge, without a third-party library that stopped updating 6 months ago. The answer is Compose Canvas. It is not a third-party chart library. It is the drawing primitive that ships with the Compose runtime. The same one that renders material, button ripples, and animated checkboxes. Charts drawn on canvas run natively on every Compose target. They are animatable, they cost no extra dependencies, and they take about 50 to 100 lines of Kotlin per chart type. In this episode, we build the chart library inside MyEuroStatApp from scratch. By the end, you will be able to draw any data shape you can imagine on any platform without reaching for a dependency. Let's go! The MyEuroStatApp project originally used Koalaplot, a third-party Compose chart library. We replaced it entirely with custom canvas charts. The reasons are worth understanding before we write a line. First, third-party chart libraries introduce version skew risk. When you update Compose Multiplatform, the chart library may not have a compatible release yet. Your build breaks, and you wait for someone else to ship a fix. With Canvas, the renderer is the Compose runtime itself. It always matches. Second, Koalaplot's API surface was designed for a different use case. Adapting it to the editorial, data journalism aesthetic of the Eurostat app required more workarounds than it saved. Third, and most practically, each of the 13 chart types in core charts is between 40 and 150 lines of Kotlin. The entire library is under 1500 lines. Understanding it completely is a 2-hour read. Understanding Koalaplot's internals was not. Before we look at charts, understand what Canvas gives you. The Canvas composable takes a modifier and a block. The block receives a DrawScope. DrawScope knows the size of the canvas in pixels, not dpp, pixels. Inside it you have primitives: drawRect, drawLine, drawPath, drawCircle, drawImage, drawImage, and drawText. All coordinates are in canvas pixels and canvas pixels. This is important. Canvas does not deal in dp. Your charts must convert from data space to pixel space. A year value like 2020 maps to a pixel x coordinate by interpolate across the canvas width. A GDP value maps to a pixel y coordinate by interpolate across the canvas height. That mapping is the algorithmic core of every chart. All drawing is immediate. Nothing is retained. On each recomposition, the block runs again from scratch. If you animate a value, say a bar height, you pass the animated float and the block draws it at that height. No retained scene graph, no diffing. Open the model package in core charts. 3 types drive the generic charts. ChartPoint is a data class with 2 properties, x as a double and y as a nullable double. Nullable y is deliberate. Eurostat data has gaps for countries that did not report a given year. And null y is deliberate. Eurostat data has gaps for countries that did not report a given year, and null y becomes a gaps is true or is skipped when false. ChartSeries wraps a list of chart points with a label and a color. The color comes from outside. The feature screen decides the palette. The chart draws it. This keeps charts decoupled from the design system tokens. ChartAxis holds a label string, an optional explicit value range, and the formatter function for axis tick labels. When range is null, the chart auto-fits to the data. The formatter defaults to the format compact number utility. 850,000 becomes 850K, 1.2 million becomes 1.2 M. Open ChartDefaults in the internal package. This is a small token system local to the chart library. It mirrors the call redesign system, but is self-contained so charts can be developed and previewed without a theme host. Ink, muted old paper, accent secondary, worn, grid line is ink at 8% opacity. Default stroke depth for line and area charts. The stroke depth is 1 dp for grid lines and sparklines. Axis gutter dp is 36 dp. The space reserved for axis labels. Axis label style is an 11 SP EBM text style with the 2-mom font feature for tabular alignment. The object is internal, chart callers cannot access it. Chart composables expose color parameters with ChartDefaults values as defaults. Feature screens can override any color by passing a different value. The defaults produce a consistent Eurostat look. Overrides support theming per feature module. Let's read EurostatLineChart completely. It is the simplest multi-series chart and establishes the pattern every other chart follows. The function signature, series as a list of ChartSeries, axis and y-axis as ChartAxis, hide axis and show gaps booleans, and the modifier. First guard, if series is empty or all points are empty, return an empty box. No data, no render. Next, compute the data range, collect all x values and all non-null y values. Resolve the axis range from explicit bounds or auto-fit. Compute x-span and y-span. Coerce to a tiny positive value to avoid division by 0. The gutter is the space for axis labels 0 when hide axis is true, axis gutter df otherwise. Then compute the y-tick positions at 5 evenly spaced values across the y range. Then draw a box, holes, a canvas, and an optional axis labels overlay. The canvas draws grid lines first, then series paths. Clean layering grid behind data, always. Inside the canvas block, width and height are available as size, width and size, tight height. The grid lines come first. For each y-tick value, compute the y-pixel position as h minus the normalized fraction times h. A simple inversion, y0 is at the top of the canvas, data minimum is at the bottom. Draw a dashed line across the full width. Then iterate over series. For each series, create a stroke with default stroke depep, rounded cap and join. Create a path. Iterate over the series points in order. For each non-null y, compute x as the normalized fraction times w and y as the inverted normalized fraction times h. If the point is the first in a segment, call moveTo, otherwise call lineTo. If y is null and showGaps is true, reset started to false, the next point begins a new segment. Finally, draw the path. The entire rendering algorithm is 12 lines. It handles gaps, multiple series, and auto-scaled axes. The demographic pyramid is the hero chart in the population module. It is more complex than a line chart but follows the same canvas pattern. The input is a list of pyramid row, each with a label, a male magnitude and a female magnitude. The chart mirrors at the vertical center, males extend left from center, females extend right. First, compute max height, the maximum of all male and female values. This is the normalization anchor. Then enter the canvas block. For each cohort row, compute the row height as total height divided by row count. Gap is 25% of row h. Bar h is row h minus gap. Mid x is width over 2. For each row, male width is male divided by max height times mid x minus 1 pixel. Female width is the same formula. Draw a rect from mid x minus male width to mid x for the male bar. Draw a rect from mid x to mid x plus female width for the female bar. The pyramid has an activeIndex parameter. When non-null, it specifies which cohort row should be highlighted. All other rows dim to the muted old color from ChartDefaults. The implementation is 4 lines inside the row loop. For the male color, if activeIndex is null or activeIndex equals the current index, use male color. Otherwise use muted. Same for female. Then draw with the resolved color. This pattern null means no highlighting. An integer means highlighted specific element is used across the chart library. EurostatLineChart uses it via a highlighted series index. EurostatBarChart uses it for a selected category. Eurostat multi-line highlighted uses it to lift one series above others. The feature screen passes the selected index from the user's touch. As the user drags a scrubber or taps a country chip, they update the component state, the component updates the UI state, the composable receives the new index and passes it to the chart. Canvas redraws. No animation framework needed for this. The canvas re-executes the block on each recomposition. Let's skim the other chart types in core charts. All of them follow the canvas pattern established by the line chart. All are in commonMain. All run on every platform. Eurostat bar chart, vertical bars, auto-scaled, gap between bars, Eurostat bar chart segments stacked, one color per category, Eurostat diverging bar chart, bars extending left for negative, right for positive, center line at 0. Used in the trade module for import-export balance. Eurostat area chart, filled polygon below a line. Eurostat donor chart arcs drawn with drawArc, label overlaid. Eurostat radar chart, polar coordinate polygon metric functions. Eurostat heatmap chart, a grid of colored cells, color saturation encoding the value magnitude. Eurostat choropleth, a simplified 23-country Europe map. Country outlines are pre-computed SVG path data, passed and drawn with canvas path. Eurostat small multiples, a grid of mini line charts, each sharing the same y-scale. Eurostat Sankey, flow ribbons between nodes, drawn with cubic Bezier curves. Because canvas charts are driven by plain Kotlin values, animation requires no chart-specific API. You animate the value with a compose animation, pass the animated flow to the chart, and the canvas block runs with the new value on each frame. The simplest case, animating bar chart height on first load. Wrap each bar's height with animate float as state. Pass the animated height to the chart composable's data. On first composition, heights animate from 0 to their target values. The canvas re-executes on each recomposition driven by the animation tick. The pyramid supports active index-driven highlighting. As the user moves a year scrubber, selected year changes in component state. The chart receives the new active index there. Non-highlighted cohorts animate from accent color to muted color using Compose's animate color as state if you wrap the color selection. The chart composable is unaware of animation. It receives a color and draws it. This is the advantage of driving charts from data values. Animation is addable at any layer without touching the drawing code. Here is the bottom line. Compose Canvas is a native drawing primitive, not a charting framework. It runs on every Compose target with no extra dependencies. Charts built on Canvas are 50 to 150 lines each, completely readable, easily modified and animatable for free by composing Compose animation APIs around the data values they consume. The Code Charts library in MyEuroStatApp has 13 chart types under 1500 lines total, covering line, bar, stacked bar, diverging bar, area, donut, pyramid, radar, heat map, choropleth, small multipline, highlighted, and Sankey. all in commonMain, all running identically on Android, iOS, desktop, and Wasm. The DrawScope API documentation is one page. The canvas composable is one function. The mental model is data space to pixel space, then draw. Once you have that, you can draw any chart you can describe. Clone MyEuroStatApp, open EurostatPyramidChart, and read it end to end. It is 70 lines. Subscribe for more on Android AI tooling and Kotlin multiplatform.